So before I get started, I just wanted to acknowledge some people. Wanted to acknowledge Simon and Colin, who have been co-advising me, and Colin's cat, I think, has been pulling most of the strings. And then on the info project, I wanted to acknowledge Robert Rose, who's helped with a lot of the, who's actually developed the topic modeling framework I've used, and Tom Murphy, who's helped with a lot of the data entry. And then finally, we're using a lot of data from the HathiTrust digital library, and their continued support from the research center has been very valuable to this. So what we're going to be talking about today, these are just kind of some goals, and this is largely a work in progress talk about methods for doing computational humanities. And we're going to look at similar themes to Strauss's talk on science of science and individual versus collective behaviors for Darwin versus looking at things based on publication history. We're also going to be introducing a lot of new measures for looking at how one traverses a corpus. So looking at lag versus burst versus focus as different ways to look at how people explore a topic space. And then finally, we'll finish up with an inquiry into Darwin's reading habits and whether or not he was picking the best way to go through the books and look at comparisons of Darwin and Wallace's writing to the state of science at that time. And some of the takeaways are just that there's many ways to explore topics. We've got a bunch of tools for rapid analysis. The last slide is going to show that we're kind of going on tour with most of them. And the topic models can detect facts about the reading structure. So why study Darwin? So beyond just kind of the obvious, it's Darwin, he actually had some peculiarities about how he did science. And in the mid-1800s, he kept a diary of every single book that he wanted to read, and then marked out when he read it down to the exact date. And so he has this incredibly rich resource that shows the entire cognitive development. And moreover, it's not even, it's not just that he kept this notebook, but he kept it for 21 years, exactly from when he got off on the Beagle and landed back in England until like 3 months after The Origin was published. So it's this incredible insight into what exactly a part of what was going into the intellectual development of Darwin. And this timeline here just shows some kind of important dates. And the first kind of, I think, sketch with the Tree of Life happened in 1837. And Darwin first sat down to write parts of The Origin in 1842. And he wrote 2 essays, sent them around to his friends, and then didn't publish it. And finally, in 1858, Wallace kind of had this co-discovery of certain parts of the theory, and they published a joint paper together, and that kind of lit the fire under Darwin to get The Origin out. And his notebooks contained 1,248 total citations, of which he had read 916. And on the right there, we've got this chart of the reading density, and there's a couple of spikes there. So the spike around the 1840 mark is due to before 1840. He often would just write down the year, and we just went back up through the notebook to the most recent date we had concretely set. So there's some irregularities in the early data. And there's also, we haven't finished the alignment with the HathiTrust. So we have full text access now to 644 of the volumes. We've modeled 498 and filtered out just to English nonfiction to get rid of some comparisons. We're also doing the analysis on the full corpus, but there's some language effects there. To actually get the text, we took full text bibliography, stuck it through a parser at this site called AnyStyle, and then built up a corpus builder that does alignment to the HathiTrust. And that's all open source, and there's a live demo. You're welcome to mess with that. And this gave us the full text access to what he had actually read. And one thing that's kind of interesting here is whenever people do science of science studies, there's this difference between looking at things versus by the publication date as opposed to how an actual scientist or an actual person would look at the text and arrange them. So by the publication date, we can see that, is this a laser? Oh, cool. There's, between he did most of his readings of works published between his birth and his death, and of those even more between when the Voyage and the Origin of Species were published. Most of the readings are between there. It also shows some metadata things with the HathiTrust. On the left, this is how he actually sequenced the readings between it, and these lines are the topics, which we'll get to presently. So now we're going to get into a bunch of the methods. So this is the LDA mega slide. This is LDA in a slide. So LDA is a generative model, and it's a theory about how texts are written. And the generative model means that it's read forward, but the way it's actually applied in practice is that you're doing Bayesian updating to try and find the theta and the phi parameters that determine your topic and word distributions. So what the thing says is you pick out a topic distribution for a document first. That's what the first line is. The second line, you pick out a word distribution from the list of topics. And then for each word position in your document, you come across a word. You first pick a topic out of your topic distribution, and then from that topic's word distribution, you pick out an actual word. And so whenever you're working backwards to it to train on a corpus, you have your tokens of words, and you're trying to infer the latent Z assignments to the topics, which determine your matrices for the words. The thing there is that you're trying to eventually get from a list of words to the most probable list of topic assignments. And the number of topics is determined beforehand, and it's easiest to think of this as a kind of a Bayesian inference problem. These are some Rorschach tests on the right, and it's kind of highlighting some important things for topic interpretation. So a lot of times during the continuing talk, like I'm going to say like, oh, this topic is his travel journals. And those, it's kind of important to just highlight that that comes from human interpretation. And there's a bunch of papers on automatic topic labeling and some work on psychological studies of how to label topics. It's also important to remember that the topics are distributions over all the words in the corpus. They're often displayed as just the top n words, but all the words are in every topic distribution. Another thing, this is a URL based off of the corpus, but there's the question once you get the topics and how to interpret them is how to explore them. And so I built up this topic explorer that shows the relative proportion of each topic in each document in the corpus and gives the total similarity between each topic. And if you go to the link, you can actually explore and click on the topics, and it will resort based off of that axis. So if you're interested in development and evolution, you could click on that topic and be able to see the top documents that are related to that axis based off of your model. There's a lot of different ways to evaluate what the best topic model is. And so there's kind of three major metrics. One is just a log likelihood for a fit of the assigned topics to the text. So you're just multiplying out all the probabilities of the distributions. And then you can take the perplexity, which is kind of the amount of indecision whenever it encounters a new word. And then there's also this information theory way, with the Jensen-Shannon divergence. And the reason why we formulate that is because there's some interesting things you can do with looking at each individual topic and how good it is at discriminating between documents. There's also a number of ways to characterize topics. So here we've got oscillation and entropy. And oscillation is just taking the document where the most of that topic occurs and subtracting the document where the least of that occurs. And so you get this ordering. And the trick is to try and get the more significant topics to generate to the top. So there's a lot of junk topics that include words like could and would and however and like argumentative and stylistic things. And so oscillation is one way to filter those out. There's also topic entropy. And then we have two measures called lag and burst, which are possible if you have the time sequence data. So with lag, you're looking at the integral of the proportion of the corpus seen minus the proportion of the topic seen. And then burst is the absolute value of that. And so we're going to walk through lag and burst right now. So this is the lag for the highest lag topic. And what lag is meant to do is if you have this dashed line, you see that's the proportion of the corpus that Darwin had read. So at the far right side, you have everything that Darwin had read. And this green line is the proportion of topic word assignments that have been seen as of that point in the reading. So both of these are normalized. And the lag is just a way to quantify that the reading along this topic 18 is later in the text than falling earlier in it. So most of this happens around 1853 and 1857 along this topic. These are the top 5 topics on lag, and these are all the topics on lag. The top 5 are there at the bottom. And burst is the same thing, but instead of taking the difference and adding them together, you're taking the absolute value of the difference. So with this topic 18 there at the very beginning and there at the end, it crosses over your proportion. So burst is actually larger than lag in this. And burst just kind of indicates like how far it's deviating from that trend line. So there's the top burst. This is the low burst and low lag. So these are the minimums. So these are the topics that trended closest to the reading proportions. So the next thing we're going to look at is actually how Darwin conducted his readings and whether or not they were directed towards actually writing his final work. And one of the kind of interesting things is that he wrote these early sketches and then waited until later in 1856 to sit down and start writing, and then really writing in earnest at 1858 to write the origin. So can we get insight into how the theory evolved by looking through the topic model? In order to do that, we need to set up some ways to navigate through the topic space. So this graphic on the right is a thing from Susan Demis's LSA paper. And it kind of highlights some things. So in a traditional IR application, you have this vector space representation. And each dimension in your vector space corresponds to a term. And each document is a vector of term frequencies. So that's kind of your term frequency model. And so you can calculate similarity between two documents by taking the cosine or by taking distributions, information theoretic measures over the probability distributions. On the right side, it shows that LSA extracts these latent variables from it. And so you can actually do comparisons of how similar a document is to a word, because now documents and terms are both inside of the vector space and not at an axis of the space. And LDA is further derived from LSA, but has the same principle. You have these latent variables on your axes, and then you have documents and terms inside of them that you can calculate similarities to. And so one thing we can do with this is look through the 498 volumes in our sample, and we take the JSD from volume to volume. So he read Malthus, and then he read Jane Eyre. And so you take all of those, and then you shuffle them up randomly. And this is kind of a different thing, right? So this is creating a null model of Darwin's reading habits. And we see that the mean is slightly less on the 60 and 80 models. And so later on, we'll focus on this 60 topic model. And the distribution is different in the things in that the actual models show more distances in this kind of mid-range region. And so one question with this is whether or not his path was actually more efficient than the other paths. And the way to do that is to look at this in kind of a traveling reader problem. So I kind of like that because Darwin was literally on a boat with 42 feet of books. So he was literally a traveling reader. So if we do a projection of the topic model into a 2D or 3D MDS process, we can generate this metric of focus. So, focus is the next thing. So first, we look at the reading path length, and this is the distribution of all the null models. And the line in the middle is the observed pattern of the readings. And so for the 20 and the 40 model, these are not significant. You're falling like right in the middle of your null model. But in the 60 and the 80, you're in the far tail of the distribution. And so he was on the more efficient ways to go through the corpus, like the top 5% ways. Another thing that you can do is take the focus. So for the focus, you take the distance between the book you read and the next book. And if it falls outside of the 95% confidence interval, so if he were to go to any random book, if this is like one of the closest 5%, then the reading's in focus. And so with that, we can actually come up with a visualization. And with the other MDS thing, I'm going to hit play on this. And with each of these, each point that's introduced is a new document, and it's colored with the top topic in that document. And going between them are the connections between in focus. So whenever there's a solid colored line being drawn, that's colored in the color of the top topic that connects those two volumes. And so there's more to come on this, and there's some weird things about the actual space that this sets up. And I'm going to be talking more about that in about a month at Rob Goldstone, Peter Todd, and Tom Landy's lab in a month. Can't go to the next slide while it's YouTubing. All right. So this is what I meant by the unusual structure. So whenever you do the MDS, you actually end up with these weird spherical structures that are actually densest towards the outside shell. And whenever the animation is going on, you can see that he takes very few paths across the middle of the sphere. And so further interpretation is needed on what exactly the axes mean. But the fact that there is this ring or shell emerging from it is weird. And we've done this analysis on some other corpuses and seen kind of a progression through the topics that makes a lot of sense. So finally, one thing we can do with the topic model is see how the readings and the writings interact. And so we use LDA query sampling, which is a way to, after you've trained a model, you fix your topic word probabilities and then try and fit those to a new text. And so we take his original 2 essays, take the origin of species, and then take Wallace's text and apply this query sampling method. And in doing so, we get this matrix of the text topic distributions. And in it, we see that on the far left column is the similarity of the 1842 essay. And it's the most similar to the 1844 essay and to Wallace's essay, and further from the origin. The essay of 44 is even closer to the origin of species based off of this topic assignment. And Wallace's text is closer to the origin, is closer to the 44 essay than to the origin. On the bottom row, we have the average topic distribution of all of Darwin's readings. And on those, we find that the 42 essay is the closest to the overall topic distribution of the readings. And so as Darwin was reading more and more, his thoughts got further and further away from the state of what he had read. And we also noticed that Wallace's readings were also farther from Darwin's reading. So this kind of shows that as, in a loose sense, as expertise was built up, he diverged more from the overall state of the science. And it's kind of interesting that this lines up really well with something that Darwin himself had noticed. So he said, if Wallace had my sketch written out in 1842, he couldn't have made a better short abstract. And so Wallace's text is most similar to that 1842 essay than it is to the origin or the 1844 essay. So that's the third row of that chart. There's a couple of confounds on corpus cleanup and how the topic model on the readings goes through everything rather than stopping it at the point of each publication. But I thought that that was really curious that the model was actually able to pick out this insight that Darwin himself had had. And this is just a quote about what Wallace and Darwin's interactions. And this is mostly to emphasize that there wasn't really a controversy. Darwin was very much thought to have carried forth the kind of banner of natural selection. Wallace is just remarking that Darwin took 20 years to do it. And Darwin himself was pretty amazed that he had actually sat down and wrote these notebooks. He's like, whoa, that was weird. And so that's the talk. So in kind of a quick summary, we went through a whole bunch of methods of LDA, went through the lag, burst, and focus metrics, and saw how the topic model can actually verify statements that have been made about historical facts. That's it. Yeah. I haven't yet. I really want to. Yeah, I really, really want to. Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting there too because you've got interactions of different network structures, right? So you've got your social network and your semantic network. And I think that one thing that really makes this different from a lot of citation analyses is that we're looking at actually the semantics of what was discussed in the text as opposed to these kind of more social effects. Oh, yeah.
That's just a lot of, so you can compare the version of writing a lot of topics and the letter, but there's a lot of times that don't show, or one that don't show.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just wondering
Yeah. Changes. Yeah, the search. Yeah, so one thing we're looking at is topic model evaluation. So how invariant are the topics that are actually discovered through the modeling process. And one idea is to vary K and see if that effect is consistent throughout a certain range of topics. That might actually be more reflective of what the thinking was about it. Like there may be a range where there's too few topics to actually capture what's going on in the corpus. Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. Eventually, we want to compare it to different models and see if this is actually a feature of the model or the other. And that's a big problem with the MDS results, too. So, yeah, Lee.
Yeah, this is a question that I could ask such as well. It's a general question. So, so when you, during your presentation, there are two different aspects. So you have your model, and there are also historical events that have happened. So my question to you is, what do you think the role of your research is? And do you look at your model and say, okay, this is here, you see spike, let's go figure out what historical event caused this? Or you look at history and say, okay, this happened, you know, such at phases in a discipline. So let's look at historical events and see if we can find evidence in the data. So what is your general project?
Yeah. So it's kind of a mutually reinforcing thing, right? So like with the Wallace and Darwin text, right? That was a thing that was said, oh, here's a historical thing that was noticed by the people. Can this model accurately capture that perception? You know, there's a, humanities-driven question into the model. Then there's questions of, oh, we noticed weird things in the model. What was going on in the humanities? So in the reading proportions, there's a sudden bend in the thing at 1849, and that seemed really weird, right? So I went in and looked into it, and it actually turns out that Darwin went on a vacation at that point, and went off to the countryside, and whenever he got back, he never picked up reading again at quite the same pace. So it kind of works in both ways, right? And I think the main thing is that it's informative, right?
You're also worried that he's overstressed reading.
Yeah.